Naruto, God-level system author, Blue Water God. Chapter 121 The End of the War. Yanren seems to have retreated. Oh? Don't those guys from Yanren continue to drag? Xianchen asked curiously. Yes, Konoha compensated Yanren with some supplies before they retreated. Tsunade nodded and said, the victorious party actually has to give the defeated party supplies, which is simply too strange. Xianchen shook his head and said, Yanren must have benefited from doing this, and it's not too small, otherwise it would be impossible to do such a shameless thing. Xianchen said affirmatively, rubbing his chin. Xianchen was right, Yanren did benefit. Yanren and Sandren gave Yanren a lot of money and material to let them hold Konoha's people. So Yanren started to argue with Hatake Tsukumo. This chat lasted for 3 years. In the end, Konoha didn't want to talk to Yanren, so he gave Yanren some benefits and sent them away. Yanren was indeed unscrupulous. After receiving the benefits of Konoha, he turned around and sold Yanren and Sandren, and went back without looking back. Onogi and Sandai Kazekage, who got the news, were out of breath, and they all clamored to make Sandai Kazekage look good. 12 But what Daemu did not expect was that after the group of white-eyed wolves in Yanren village returned, they gathered their forces and entered the land from the sea. Onogi's face flushed, and he didn't care about fighting with Konoha. He angrily threw a word to Sandai Kazekage, and then left with Iwainen. At this time, the 3 generations of Fenning were dumbfounded, and they all left, leaving them. Sharon, what should you do with them? Daemu, you pits me. 3 generations of Fenning roared. Consultant Chio, what should we do now? Are we surrendering to Konoha, or fighting against Konoha to the end? Kazuki Sandai couldn't make up his mind, so he could only ask Chio for advice. Fight, never surrender, just as White Fang is coming. I want him to be buried with my son and daughter-in-law. Chio's eyes were red. All right. 3 generations of Kazekage felt that he asked in vain. After hesitating for a long time, the 3 generations of Fenning decided not to surrender, and they could not afford the price of surrender. Originally there was Rock Ninja Village, and even if they surrendered, Rock Ninja Village shared the burden. Now, Sand Ninja Village is left. If they surrender, Konoha will bite them to death without opening their mouths. The situation in the ninja world has changed so quickly that the 3 generations of Hokage Sarutobi Hijian laughed and screamed. Then he took the ninja to attack Sand Ninja frantically, and the Sand Ninja couldn't lift his head, and with White Fang bringing the ninja to support, Sand Ninja's situation was even worse. In just 1 month, Sand Ninja had already retreated to the territory of the Kingdom of Wind. And with Sand Ninja's defeat, the Second Ninja World War also came to an end. In fact, if it wasn't for Yanren to disrupt the situation, the Second Ninja World War would have ended long ago. Because of Yanren's wrangling, Tsukumo Konoha Shirato and Hatake Tsukumo were held back, plus Xianchen's inaction. The Second Shinobi World War has only continued until now. Hanzo of the Land of Rain, after a symbolic resistance, also issued a letter of surrender to Konoha, freeing Orochimaru and Rijuru. After that, the unfortunate Sand Shinobi is left. Sand Shinobi is now very unlucky, and he alone resists all the fighting power of the entire Konoha, making Sand Shino miserable. The Land of Winds is all over the desert, causing a lot of trouble for the unfamiliar Konoha, and allowing sand to breathe. But a single tree is difficult to support. A village in Sharon Village is still too reluctant to fight against the strongest Konoha. After just holding on for more than half a year, Sharon Village submitted a letter of surrender. Seeing Sand Ninja submitting the surrender letter, Konoha's ninja was also relieved, and the war was finally over. Sarutobi Hizen looked at Sand Ninja Village's compensation form, his brows furrowed into a ball, and he only paid 1 billion tals. If he compensated like this, Konoha, who was a victorious country, would lose money. So Sarutobi Hizen rejected it on the spot, and came up with the minimum bottom line of war compensation, asking Sand Shinobi to compensate 50 billion tals. Sand Ninja blew up on the spot, and he couldn't get that much money. After selling the Sand Ninja Village, 3 generations of Kazekage directly stated that you should either take 1 billion tals and leave, or you will start a war, and the big deal is a deadly fight to the end. What do you guys think? The 3rd Hokage said with a cigarette in his mouth, frowning. It is impossible for them to really destroy the Sand Ninja Village, and the Sand Ninja Village is not so easy to destroy, but the war indemnity of the Sand Ninja Village is too small. What else can we do? Fight over and destroy Sand Ninja Village? Danzo roared aggressively. Sarutobi Hizen glanced at Danzo, then turned to look at the others. This proposal was completely nonsense. Even if they eliminated Sand Shinobi, what would happen to Konoha under Sand Shinobi's death-defying counterattack? Xianchen sat in the corner, quietly watching them gossip. After chatting for a long time, there was no result, and the stalemate with Sand Ninja continued. After another few months of stalemate, Konoha had no choice but to agree to the compensation from Sandin Village due to the Supply problem. The 2 countries also established diplomatic relations and became allies. After the signing of the agreement, Konoha began to withdraw, and Yanran and Yanren also stopped the war. Yanran suffered a big loss at the hands of Yanren, and the two sides also forged the Liangzi. When he was evacuating from Yuran village, Jiraiya unexpectedly accepted Yuriko and Nagato as his disciples and planned to teach them for a while. Seeing this scene, Xianchen frowned slightly, and the trajectory seemed to return to before. Originally, Xianchen thought that the trajectory had changed, and Yuriko and Nagato would not worship Jiraiya as their teachers. Now it seems to be wrong, and without Xiaonan, Yuriko and Nagato still meet together. Should it be said that 153 is destined? Looking at Nagato's covered samsara eye, Xianchen's eyes flashed with covetousness. He knew that Uchiha Madara must have left a means on samsara eye, and moving samsara eye might alarm Uchiha Madara. But Xianchen is not afraid at all. So what about Madara Uchiha? Even if I take away your samsara eye, you can only watch. After thinking about it, Xianchen still gave up. He was ready to go to the moon. If he chose to absorb pupil power, Xianchen was still willing to choose Tensei. Because Xianchen was afraid that the pupil power of the samsara eye would be repelled from the pupil power of his Tensei eye. Teaching people from other villages, thanks to you if you can think of it. Sarutobi is a good disciple you taught. Danzo left with dissatisfaction. Hey, Jiraiya, remember to return to the village as soon as possible. Looking at the firm Jiraiya, Sarutobi hasn't said helplessly. This kind of war orphans, living is also a kind of pain. Ending their lives is the best choice. I really don't understand your idiot's thoughts. Okimaru said murderously. Yahiko and Nagato looked at Okimaru in fear. Okimaru, Zilai also roared in dissatisfaction. Sometimes it's not your own. It's better to give up and be careful to get into trouble. Xianchen glanced at Nagato and said lightly. Then, without waiting for others to question, Xianchen stepped forward. Chapter 122 Go to the moon to absorb the giant Tenseigan. After more than 10 days, Xianchen and the others returned to Konoha. The whole Konoha village was very lively, with lanterns and colorful festivities. Konoha villagers came to welcome these Konoha heroes spontaneously. His and Sarutobi, who was walking at the forefront, disappeared with a smile on his face. But I was also happy for this day. In the next few days, Konoha was shrouded in lamentations, and countless ninjas went to Konoha Cemetery to pay homage to the ninjas who died in this war. The entire Konoha was shrouded in mourning, and this was the price paid by the war. When the villagers of Konoha were mourning, Hyuga Tatsu spoke to Tsunade, Mikoto and the others, and then left Konoha village. It's mysterious, and I don't know what is going on. Tsunade shook his head and started packing. She had already decided before that she would leave Konoha after the war, and Xianchen and the others also left together. Because of what Xianchen did, even if Xianchen wanted to stay in Konoha, Sandai and Danzo would not be able to accommodate him. When he came to a remote place, Xianchen took out a bottle of blue-purple potion and was very excited. This bottle of potion is the perfect serum from the previous system gift package. Xianchen planned to use it now and then go to the moon. The system didn't say how to use it. Is it oral? Xianchen asked a question mark. After thinking about it, Xianchen opened the medicine and drank it. If it was injected, the system would definitely give it a syringe. Since it was not given, it should be taken orally. After drinking it, Xianchen felt that his body began to heat up. His skin turned red, and there was a slight tingling on his body. After a long time, it stopped. Xianchen suddenly opened his eyes, wrapped his palms around armed with a domineering look, stretched out his hand and slammed it. The air burst and roared, and even the space appeared slightly distorted. This kind of power shouldn't be much worse than the 8 Gates Danjia formation. Xianchen estimated that his power now is no weaker than when he turned on Tensei's chakra mode 5 years ago. To increase physical fitness tenfold, the increase in strength is not only tenfold, but dozens or even hundreds of times. Immortal mode. Xianchen instantly entered the fairy mode, wearing a royal robe made of photons. A lightning mark appeared on his forehead, and his hair flashed with lightning. After years of training, Xianchen has now cultivated into the perfect immortal mode, and can instantly enter the immortal mode. Feeling his own strength, but it was more than doubled, Xianchen frowned slightly. Although he had already guessed the result, he was still very disappointed. If the immortal mode can increase the power dozens of times again, no joke, Xianchen can easily blow the earth with one punch. While the result disappointed him, it did not exceed his expectations. Otherwise the immortal mode would be too perverted. But it's not bad to be able to double it. Now I feel that Lidoban can't stop me from a few punches. I really have the strength to cross the ninja world. Xianchen's eyes flashed. After disabling the immortal mode, Xianchen looked at the moon. Although it was daytime, Xianchen could still see the moon hanging in the sky. It's time. The husband is innocent, and he is guilty. Xianchen said coldly. If there is no way to go to the moon, Tenseigan is the best way. After stepping into space, Xianchen appears on the moon in an instant, and Tenseigan is the channel connecting the moon. This moon is really strange. There is actually oxygen. Xianchen took a breath of air and said, and then entered the interior of the moon. The suspended earth, the luxurious ancient palace, but it was a bit shabby. At this time, as if it had just experienced a war, which was a little different from what Xianchen imagined. What's going on? Could it be that the Otsutsuki clan has already experienced civil strife? It shouldn't be. Xianchen frowned slightly, then glanced at it and found that there were only a few lives on the entire moon. Feeling the same source of pupil power in the distance, Xianchen's eyes fluctuated slightly. Although I don't know when the Otsutsuki clan broke out into civil strife, this is better for me and saves me a lot of effort. Xianchen smiled slightly, and then flew towards the temple in front. Ha ha ha, with Tensei, and without those clans that hinder our wishes, we can fulfill the wishes of our ancestors and destroy the wrong earth. The people from the Otsutsuki branch laughed wildly. Really? You may have no chance. Why don't I send you to see the ancestors, and you ask him what he means? Xianchen appeared behind them, swung out Dankin Cloud's sword, and cut off their heads with one sword. In the case of not knowing what the opponent's guards are, Xianchen will not push the opponent too much, but kill the opponent first. In this way, the only remaining members of the Otsutsuki clan were all hacked to death by Xianchen, and the poor Otsutsuki had no hope of being born. Looking at the huge Tenseigan next to him and feeling the majestic pupil power in it, Xianchen's heart became hot, and this huge pupil power was stronger than Xianchen's Tenseigan. Under the slight pressure, Xianchen approached the giant Tenseigan, and then placed his hand on the giant Tenseigan. The two Tenseigan eyes shone with star-like light, and the huge pupil power quickly flowed into Xianchen's Tenseigan. Xianchen's entire body was wrapped in pupil power, and then absorbed by Tenseigan, feeling that his whole body was warm, as if he was soaking in a hot spring. Half an hour later, Xianchen absorbed the pupil power of the huge Tenseigan, and the Tenseigan that lost its pupil power turned into powder and dissipated. Xianchen covered his eyes and sat on the ground with his buttocks. Feeling the pain in his eyes, a wry smile appeared at the corner of Xianchen's mouth. The pupil power is too strong, as expected from the accumulation of countless white A's. After Xianchen absorbed all the pupil power, he felt that his eyes were about to burst. After a long time of recovery, Xianchen stood up, and now the huge pupil power in Tensei's eyes needs to be digested by Xianchen. Now Xianchen feels that his reincarnation eye pupil power is improving all the time, and it will definitely become stronger after he has completely digested his pupil power. At this time, Xianchen looked at the 5 corpses of 3 men, 2 women and 5 corpses next to him. He walked over and looked at it, but he found no ninjutsu or taijutsu, which made Xianchen a little disappointed. I originally wanted to learn from the techniques handed down by the Otsutsuki family since ancient times, but I didn't expect it to exist. Get up and put away the things you are looking at in the palace, and then leave the palace. After leaving the palace, Xianchen did not go back, but made a circle inside the moon. It seems that it hasn't been long since the end of the war, and the corpse has not been cleaned up yet, so I got a cheap one. Looking at the corpses everywhere, Xianchen smiled. It's better to come early than to come by coincidence. If Xianchen came early, he might have to face the whole family of Otsutsuki. While walking, Xianchen suddenly stopped, turned to look at the figure who suddenly appeared behind him. His face turned cold. Who are you? Chapter 123 Otsutsuki Hamura. Xianchen looked at the mysterious man with a cold expression. Can the other party suddenly appear behind him? Can it be simple? My name is Otsutsuki Hamura. An old voice reached Xianchen's ears. You ugly guy is Otsutsuki Hamura? Xianchen asked with a frown. The corners of Otsutsuki Hamura's mouth twitched, anger appeared on his face, and at the same time there was some shock. He seemed to understand himself by listening to the other party's tone. Tell me, what's the matter with me? Xianchen said lightly. He could clearly feel the maliciousness of the other party, and the purpose of Otsutsuki Hamura's appearance was definitely not simple. I can feel the evil in your heart. For the peace of the ninja world, you stay here with me. Otsutsuki Hamura looked at Xianchen with pure white eyes. Ha ha ha. It's ridiculous, kicking at the speed of light. Xianchen laughed a few times, and suddenly he shot violently, kicking Otsutsuki Hamura who couldn't escape. The powerful force shattered half of Otsutsuki Hamura's body, and then destroyed the surrounding buildings. If you can do it, you won't be noisy, not to mention that the other party is the younger brother of the six-path immortal, Otsutsuki Hamura. Of course, it is better to start first. Otsutsuki Hamura, who was kicked to pieces, recovered in the blink of an eye, staring at Xianchen with frost-like eyes. I am the incarnation of chakra, you can't kill me. Stay here obediently. 80 God's airstrike. Countless overwhelming fists hit Xianchen at a speed like a meteor. The moves are powerful, but you have to hit me. Xianchen instantly hid in his own space. Yato Shenkong, who lost his target, hit the inside of the moon, causing the entire moon to tremble a few times. The space ability is not unmatched. Kwankwan Hirazaka. Otsutsuki Hamura opened a dark cave, and then submerged in it, appearing in the space of Xianchen. Do you really only have chakra and soul left now? Xianchen asked Otsutsuki Hamura, who had just entered, and was not surprised that Otsutsuki Hamura could enter his own space. Otsutsuki Hamura didn't reply, and looked at Xianchen indifferently. Xianchen thought about it, and he can now be sure that Otsutsuki Hamura definitely not only left chakra and soul, but his physical body is definitely still there. Take Senju Hasuma as an example. Everyone else is dead, but the cells are still alive. How could Otsutsuki Hamura, which is stronger than Senju Hasuma, die? Where's your Tenseigan? Xianchen asked suspiciously. Could it be that Otsutsuki Hamura doesn't have Tenseigan? You mean that? Otsutsuki Hamura closed his eyes, then opened them again, becoming a Tenseigan somewhat different from Xianchen's Tenseigan. It's really powerful pupil power. Xianchen said with admiration. This pupil power is a little stronger than the previous him, and he is indeed the ancestor of the Hyuga family. Give you a chance, hand over your Tenseigan, and I can spare you from dying. Ahahaha. I really thought that if I lived a little longer, I would be able to kill me. If you dare to talk to me like this, and dare to peep at my Tenseigan, you are destined to die today without a place to be buried. Xianchen's tone was a little angry, but he dared to hit him. I still want your Tenseigan. He had known for a long time that Otsutsuki Hamura had bad intentions, but he didn't expect that he was peeping at his Tenseigan. Arrogant. Don't think that you can compete with me if you have a Tenseigan. 6 paths, Shenkong palm. Otsutsuki Hamura patted the void, and a huge palm print that covered the space bombarded Sun Xianchen. Small worm carving trick. Xianchen curled his lips in disdain, covered his fist with a domineering look of armament, and then smashed the imposing vacuum palm print with one punch. Otsutsuki Hamura frowned. He didn't expect the opponent to be so strong. His move was his brother Otsutsuki Yue, and he couldn't break it so easily. Otsutsuki Hamura became serious, looked at Xianchen vigilantly, and completely regarded the opponent as an opponent of the same level. Frightened by the strength of the young master? Hand over all your chakras and Tenseigans to those who are sensible. Maybe I will leave you a little soul to survive. Extremely arrogant. Otsutsuki Hamura was furious, and behind him appeared 12 jades, arranged in an S shape. Under the control of Otsutsuki Hamura, it turned into a sword and stabbed towards Hyuga Tatsu. Useless attack. When the sword that Kudeo turned into was about to hit Xianchen, a space crack appeared, and all the swords that Kudeo turned into were submerged in the space crack. However, Otsutsuki Hamura didn't expect the Deo Jade to make merit at all. When Xianchen used his space ability to defend the Deo Jade, he immediately turned into a streamer and appeared behind Xianchen. Softboxing technique. 8 diagrams 361 forms. The fists and palm prints of the violent storm poured onto Xianchen's body. Is it fun to hit my shadow clone? After Otsutsuki Hamura finished fighting, Xianchen's voice came from behind Otsutsuki Hamura. When Otsutsuki Hamura rushed over, Xianchen had already used the shadow clone, and then used the clone technique to exchange positions with the shadow clone. Because the speed was too fast, Otsutsuki Hamura didn't see it. Come and taste the power of the 361 gossip style. A Tji gossip formation enveloped Otsutsuki Yukon, and then fists and palm prints greeted Otsutsuki Yukon. And on the palm that Xianchen punched out, it was wrapped in a green sphere, constantly extracting the chakra of Otsutsuki Hamura. Otsutsuki Hamura roared again and again, but Xianchen didn't give him a chance to resist at all. After the 8 diagrams 361 forms were over, Xianchen leaned on the extreme speed, chased after Otsutsuki Hamura, and kept absorbing his chakra. Facing the Xianchen moving at the speed of light, Otsutsuki Hamura could only catch the figure of Xianchen, but could not keep up with his speed. Now Otsutsuki Hamura was beaten and wanted to call her mother. Of course, even if Otsutsuki Hamura really called his mother, Otsutsuki Kaguya would kill this bad boy with his own hands. Although the chakra of Otsutsuki Hamura was huge, it couldn't stand Xianchen's continuous extraction. After 10 minutes, Otsutsuki Hamura couldn't hold on anymore. Leaving the incarnation of chakra, Otsutsuki Hamura's soul escaped and wanted to break through the space of Xianchen to leave. Normal strangers can't see the soul, but Xianchen has a Zanpei Kuto, so he can naturally see the soul. Looking at Otsutsuki Hamura, who fled in front of him without covering it up, Xianchen smiled unkindly, took out a slasher like fire, and slashed at Otsutsuki Hamura. Just when Otsutsuki Hamura was about to be hacked to death, he suddenly reacted and barely avoided Ryuran Uohuo, but his right arm was chopped off. At this time, Otsutsuki Hamura also broke through the space of Xianchen, and immediately got in and escaped. Seeing Otsutsuki Hamura fleeing in embarrassment, Xianchen snorted coldly, then grabbed the arm that had turned into a mass of soul power in his hand and sealed it. Chapter 124 Fierce Battle. Otsutsuki Hamura. Looking at the incarnation of chakra, who has no intelligence and is rushing towards him like a puppet, Xianchen solves it with a few tricks, and then seals the chakra of Otsutsuki Hamura. This is a good thing. Carrots are precious. Leaving his own space and returning to the moon again, seeing and hearing the domineering release, instantly enveloped dozens of kilometers, and then Xianchen turned into a streamer and shuttled on the moon, constantly perceiving everything on the moon. Even if the entire moon is smashed, Xianchen will also find Otsutsuki Yukon, and then kill him, otherwise the tiger will return to the mountain, and there will be endless troubles. Under Xianchen's perception, Otsutsuki Yumura still couldn't escape, and was found by Xianchen. "You really want to break the net with me?" Otsutsuki Yumura's face was ugly, looking at Xianchen. At this time, he had returned to his physical body, and as Xianchen had guessed, his physical body was not dead. "Didn't you say that my heart is evil, and I know the world of cholera? I'll give you a chance to kill the people. Why are you running?" Xianchen jokingly said. "I really thought I would be afraid of you." Tenseigan chakra mode. Otsutsuki Hamura was shrouded in turquoise chakra, and a huge momentum swept the moon, causing the moon to vibrate violently. At this time, the earth is at night, and people can see that the moon is constantly shaking, and they are very confused. Is this moon drunk? There are even some mediocre guys, worried that the moon will fall and kill them. "Humphrey, I'll stand and let you fight. But you can't beat me." Sun Xianchen snorted coldly, looking at Otsutsuki Yumura with disdain. "See how long you can be arrogant." The golden wheel is reborn. Gaotanyuan. When Otsutsuki Hamura used the golden wheel reincarnation explosion, Hyuga Tatsu used Gaotanyuan, and then became immune to the golden wheel reincarnation explosion. Momentarily moved to the front of Otsutsuki Yumura, wrapped his arms in a domineering manner, and instantly entered the immortal mode. 6-style profound truth. The largest round of the Six Kings Spear. Xianchen carried the strongest power and hit Otsutsuki Yumura's chest. Half of his body was directly turned into ashes by Xianchen, and the remaining half of his body was knocked out of the moon. However, Otsutsuki Yukon also has an immortal human body, plus it is a 6th level character, but it takes only a few seconds to recover. This kind of recovery ability is simply abnormal. Xianchen caught up in an instant, and the two fought in space. The surrounding meteorites had become their weapons, and they kept colliding under the gravitational control of the two. At their level, there is no need for oxygen anymore, and the various radiations in space are also ineffective for them, and they are not afraid of the environment in space. Bump. Xianchen was hit by the 80 divine sky, and his body flew out, smashing a huge meteorite. Looking at the scars that disappeared in an instant, Xianchen showed a bloodthirsty smile on the corner of his mouth. Speaking of which, this was the first time he had been hurt by someone else. Electro-optical particle cannon. A golden-yellow, thunder-entangled beam cannon shot towards Otsutsuki Hamura in the distance. Otsutsuki Hamura turned pale in shock, and quickly controlled the surrounding meteorites and Tau SJ to block in front of him. However, huge meteorites of dozens of kilometers and hundreds of kilometers are as fragile as paper under the electro-optical particle cannon. The electro-optical particle cannon hit Otsutsuki Hamura, and then emitted a dazzling light. After a long time, the light dissipated. Otsutsuki Hamura clutched his chest, his body was tattered, and his body was destroyed by the blasting damage of the electro-optical particle cannon. It's the first time to use the combination of the glitter fruit and the thunder fruit at the same time, and the effect is not bad. Xianchen nodded, very satisfied with the power of this move. Then it turned into a flash, and Xianchen came to Otsutsuki Hamura in an instant, and then used the speed of light kick to kick him back to the moon again. Smashed through the surface of the moon and fell into the inner space of the moon. Otsutsuki Yumura spewed out a mouthful of old blood, and his eyes were hazy. Just now, Xianchen kicked him on the head, and he was already kicked, and now his head is still buzzing. 6th level is nothing but the same, but you are the first person to fight with me for so long. I will give you a gorgeous ending. Sun Xianchen sneered and looked at Otsutsuki Yumura. Although Xianchen is not at the 6th path level, his combat power is stronger than that of the 6th path level, and his current single-handed technique is stronger than that of Beimankai. Moreover, Akina is a moment of youth, but Xianchen is not. Akai can hit Liu Daoban, and Xianchen, who is stronger than Beimankai, can naturally smash Otsutsuki Yukon. The strength of Otsutsuki Hamura is not stronger than that of Liu Dao Madara, and it is not even comparable to Liu Dao Madara, who became the 10-tailed person. I didn't expect a freak like you to appear in the ninja world. If my eldest brother knew about it, he would have a headache. Otsutsuki Hamura smiled miserably. Your strength is indeed very strong, but it is impossible to want my life. Otsutsuki Hamura roared angrily, recovered once again, then waved his left arm, leaning on one arm to hit the 80-god airstrike again. It's not that Hamura Otsutsuki wanted to pretend to be coercive and had to use one hand to use the 80-god's airstrike, but the soul of Hamura Otsutsuki's right hand, which had been cut off by Xianchen's Ryu Yohuo before arm, but it has been scrapped. Humphrey, I resisted the 80-god's airstrike before, but I just wanted to see its power. You thought the 80-god's airstrike would be useful to me. Xianchen snorted coldly, and then used elementalization to directly ignore the attack of the 80-god's airstrike. Any physical attack would be ineffective against him. And Otsutsuki Hamura's strongest aspect is also physical art, So Otsutsuki Hamura is actually very sad in front of Xianchen. Originally, after seeing Xianchen being beaten into a group of light in the sky, Otsutsuki Hamura was very excited, thinking that Xianchen had grown up and was beaten to death by him. But after seeing the group of light come together again, and then the light disappeared, revealing the unscathed Xianchen, Otsutsuki Hamura's expression immediately turned ugly. Even now Otsutsuki Hamura is desperate. Actually, I want to kill you, it's easy. Xianchen mocked lightly. Even Xianchen himself can't find his weakness, who else can beat him? From the moment he took the super serum, Xianchen was no longer afraid of anyone, even if the Datongma Taoshi and Datongma Kaguya went together, Xianchen was not afraid. With 6-level attack power and invincible defense, who can defeat Xianchen? Now only time can be his enemy. And now Xianchen will soon overcome time, and the only enemy will disappear at that time. Alas, invincible is really lonely. Who else can fight me? Xianchen's voice echoed in the inner space of the moon. Don't be arrogant, you haven't defeated me yet. Otsutsuki Hamura shouted humiliatingly. You? I haven't put you in my eyes yet. If you call your eldest brother over and add the two of you together, I might be able to look at you. Xianchen said dismissively. Chapter 125 Otsutsuki Hamura demonized by Otsutsuki Wraith. Do you still want to struggle? No matter how much struggle, it's useless. After living for thousands of years, it's time to die. Xianchen took out the blade, and pointed the tip of the sword at Otsutsuki Hamura. HMPH. Otsutsuki Hamura, how could I lose to the younger generation? Otsutsuki Hamura said stubbornly. Xianchen looked at the other party with disdain, and said lightly, you are already exhausted, and you still want to make some waves. I'm really not your opponent, but if I want to leave, you can stop me. Otsutsuki Hamura opened the pitch-black cave in an instant, and wanted to escape with the ultimate space ninjutsu called Huangquan Hirazaka. Want to run? No one can escape in my hands. Time is still. Xianchen smiled coldly, using time to freeze time and make everything stop. In an instant, he came to Otsutsuki Hamura, and then reached out and buttoned down Otsutsuki Hamura's Tenseigan. You have nothing to do and come out to send me Tenseigan. If I don't accept it, wouldn't I look down on you? Xianchen smiled and looked at the Tenseigan in his hand, and then kicked Otsutsuki Hamura away with one foot, releasing time from standing still. My eyes, you actually gouged my eyes. After the time pause was lifted, Otsutsuki Hamura cried out in pain and embarrassment. Then Otsutsuki Hamura used the yin-yang escape to create 2 eyes for himself. These 2 eyes are naturally not tensei eyes, but white eyes. Can you use yin-yang escape to create white eyes? Xianchen's expression was sluggish. Although Baiyan looks like a dish, with the development and juice, it will not be weaker than Sangyu Jade Sharingan in the end. The most important thing is a large number of Baiyan, which can create Tenseigan. You can create white A's, why don't you use a lot of white eyes to create a giant Tenseigan instead of peeping at my Tenseigan? Xianchen asked curiously. Humphrey, you thought Tenseigan was born so well? Otsutsuki Hamura snorted coldly. Even he didn't know how the members of the Otsutsuki branch created the giant Tenseigan. Xianchen nodded, and his heart was filled with joy. Fortunately, the Otsutsuki branch family had already created a giant Tenseigan, otherwise he might not have been able to create it himself. So, is the giant Tenseigan created by the Otsutsuki branch family an accident? That's right, Otsutsuki Hamura said with an unpleasant expression. Originally, the giant Tenseigan had been taken as his own, but he didn't expect to kill Xianchen halfway through, cutting off the giant Tenseigan. It's such a pity. I wanted to control you and let you create a Tenseigan for me. Now it doesn't seem to work. You're useless like this. Go to hell. Humphrey, let you see my true means. The undead of the Otsutsuki clan, obey the call of the ancestors. Wake up. Otsutsuki Hamura stretched out his hand. The moon vibrated, and countless souls returned from the underworld, gathered towards him, and surrounded Sun Xianchen. Xianchen was surprised for a moment, and then the corners of his mouth showed disdain, and said lightly, can you beat me with just a group of ghosts and ghosts? There are all kinds of things. They are all ashes. The blades are like fire. The temperature continued to rise. Xianchen stood there like the sun, and some soul bodies were burned by the explosion before they approached Xianchen. Ryuran Uohuo is the strongest Zanpei Kuto of the flame type, and chopping these little devil-like characters is not as simple as chopping vegetables and melons. Otsutsuki Hamura did not dare to neglect, and quickly let the dead souls of the Otsutsuki clan withdraw, looking at Xianchen, who had no solution, with a sense of despair in his heart. Otsutsuki Hamura, who didn't want to die, stern face, and then flew into the air, sucking all the dead souls of the Otsutsuki clan into his body, turning himself into a huge evil ghost monster. What is this? Seeing the monster with a demon mask on its face, several hundred meters tall and with 6 arms, Xianchen was startled. Ha ha ha. The undead power of the Otsutsuki clan for thousands of years has been absorbed by me, and now no one can defeat me. Otsutsuki Hamura laughed wildly. Is this corroded? Looking at the frantic Otsutsuki Hamura, Hyuga-chen frowned and said, "The appearance of Otsutsuki Hamura now seems to have lost his mind." Xianchen jumped up and kept dodging Otsutsuki Hamura's fist. The huge fist smashed and the earth trembled. Senjutsu Suzu, huge, nearly 200 meters. Suzu with a thunder mark appeared and confronted Otsutsuki Hamura. Although Xianchen's immortal art, Susanara was a bit taller, it was still not as tall as Otsutsuki Hamura. "You don't have to be great if you're big." The Fudoya soul in Suzu's hand unsheathed and slashed at Otsutsuki Hamura with a single knife. Ki. The sound of gold and iron symphony recalled that Suzu almost took a few steps back, but Otsutsuki Hamura was unscathed. "Damn it! This defense has failed," Xianchen said in astonishment. He originally thought that this demonized Otsutsuki Hamura was a paper tiger, but he didn't expect it to be a real tiger. Roar! Otsutsuki Hamura roared loudly, and then his fist, carrying the aura of destroying all things, smashed towards Suzu. Suzu, who was hit, took a dozen steps back, and the armor on his chest was slightly cracked, and then repaired in an instant. "Damn, who's afraid of who? Watch me blow your head off." Xianchen manipulated Suzu and started a fierce battle with Otsutsuki Hamura. Boom. 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 Suzu smashed on the ground. His arm was shattered, and his armor was all torn apart. Immortal art Suzu was no match for Otsutsuki Hamura at all. "I didn't expect that the first time I used Xianju, Suzu, I actually failed." Hyuga-chen muttered depressedly. Spirituality Stone Giant. Prestige Suzu. The Stone Giant was psyched out, and then Suzu turned into an armor, attached to the Stone Giant's body, and collided with Otsutsuki Hamura again. This collision was irrelevant. "I'm invincible, no one can beat me, ha 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 ha." The power is powerful, but unfortunately people have gone crazy. It's sad. Hyuga 1.7 Chen shook his head in schadenfreude. "I'm not going to play with you anymore. The profound truth of physical art, Star Destruction Strike." Xianchen shouted with a straight face and a slightly serious expression. The powerful airflow wrapped Xianchen, kicking the ground with both feet, leaving a huge pit like a crater, and the speed distorted the space. Boom! A huge explosion resounded through the moon, and dense cracks appeared in the space. Hamura Otsutsuki was knocked back to its original shape by this blow, lying on the ground, lingering on the ground, and the moon, which was hit by an unpredictable disaster, was also shattered by countless large holes at this time, and almost fell apart. Star Destruction Strike is a body technique created by Xianchen himself. In theory, it can blow up the planet with one blow, but Xianchen definitely can't do it now. But destroying Otsutsuki Yukon is an easy matter. Even if Tentai is in front of Xianchen, he can teach it to be a beast with a single strike. If you like this audiobook, subscribe the channel for more videos like this. Leave some comment and let me know if you guys like this story, or you have a web novel you like and want to hear its audiobook. I will be happy to create them for you. Please like, share, and leave a comment on the video.